Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see everyone here. Good morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is the first day of our course, Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. This is going to help you to be able to build a really nice foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. We're going to be exploring many different topics as part of our time together. And I'm going to introduce you guys to the course here in a little bit. We're going to start with some meditation, but then afterwards, I'll introduce you to the course, helping you guys to understand what it is I'm going to be sharing with you over the next 5 days. Then after that, I'm going to share with you the life story actually of the Buddha, so you guys can understand the life story of the Buddha. Then I'm going to share with you what is enlightenment. We're going to take a mid-morning break, and then as our lunch break is over, then I'm going to end up sharing with you this afternoon about Buddhist chanting to help you guys learn about Buddhist chanting. So we got a whole full day ahead of us to be able to help you guys to learn the path to enlightenment and the teachings of the Buddha. But we're just going to start with some meditation to help you guys get started. I think most of you guys have all been here before. Is there anybody that hasn't been here before? You've been here before. You came on Wednesday, right? Everyone's been here before. Okay. So normally I give a big introduction about the chanting and the seated position, but I think all of you guys have been here before, so we can just go right into the chanting. I don't need to explain all the details. So if you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. Make yourself comfortable. And then after the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance. There's going to be a period of time of quietness, and then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Arahang Sama Sammuhoto Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Damang namasami Supatipano mahakawato Sawakasangko Sanghang namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakawa Arahang Sama Sammuhoto Vicacaranang sammuno Sakato rokawitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa Manusranang Hoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and just start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. I have plenty of things to share with you, but typically when a new group of students is coming together to learn the teachings of the Buddha, I just like to spend a few minutes kind of helping you get situated with understanding how to approach the teachings of the Buddha, even before I introduce you to the course. It's important that as you're learning throughout your journey to enlightenment, that you never believe the teachings of the Buddha. There is no belief in his teachings, and belief won't lead to enlightenment. So it's important that as I speak, as I teach you, as you read books that I write and things of this nature, as we have personal conversations, never believe anything that anybody says about the teachings of the Buddha, because belief is something that you don't know whether it's true or false. Either somebody convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. In order to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate wisdom. That's what it means to awaken to enlightenment, is you're cultivating wisdom about the natural laws. The Buddha taught these natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And when you don't know these natural laws, you will struggle and you'll have difficulties in your day-to-day life. That's what the stress and anxiety is. That's the anger and the frustration, the guilt and the shame and fear. That's the mind struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. We experienced this as a child. We were living in a world that we didn't understand. That's why we struggled and had difficulties with other natural laws, like the natural law of gravity. We fell down, we bumped our head, we, maybe broke our knees in terms of like the skin started coming, or the blood started coming out when we broke the skin. We broke our toys. We had all kinds of trouble with the natural law of gravity, because this natural law was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. And because we didn't have wisdom of it, we didn't make very wise decisions related to it. So we fell down and we hurt ourselves. We broke our toys. But slowly but surely, you could say that we awoke to the natural law of gravity. We cultivated wisdom about this natural law. And now with that wisdom, we make wiser decisions. So we don't struggle with it anymore. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk as we walked. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. And now we don't have those same troubles that we had when we didn't understand the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. We're at the point now where we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because you might say we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity. We're not believing in this natural law. We can see it for ourselves. It's right there. Right? We're never believing in this natural law. So the same thing needs to happen with all these other natural laws that the Buddha taught, that you don't believe in them and you cultivate wisdom about them through learning, examining, and investigating the teachings. You then reflect on his teachings to independently verify whether they're true or false, and then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life so that you can actually start making decisions through that wisdom. Just like we now make decisions through the wisdom of the natural law of gravity, and it produces more wholesome results for us. As you make decisions through these natural laws that the Buddha taught, you will see that it produces more and more wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So I'm going to teach you guys plenty of things in this course, and if you decide that you're going to continue to learn beyond this course, there's plenty more things that you're going to learn. But it's important that you don't ever believe these teachings. You need to be able to awaken by cultivation of wisdom. And that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment, so that you can make wise decisions based in these natural laws. So I'm going to introduce you to the course here, help you guys to understand what the course is all about. And then ultimately after this, I'm going to share with you the life story of the Buddha, because that's a great place to really start, is just understand this individual that we refer to as the Buddha. We're going to take a mid-morning break. And then when we come back, I'm going to teach you another topic of what is enlightenment, because if you're going to navigate your way to enlightenment, you need to know what it is so you can more easily navigate your way to it. We're going to take a hour-and-a-half lunch break, and then when we come back, I'm going to teach you Buddhist chanting. So that's our plan for today. But in terms of the course in general, we meet each day from 9 to 3. You'll see that I'll start each day at 9 o'clock, and then we generally finish at 3 o'clock. Some days a little bit earlier, maybe some days a little bit later, but typically it's right around 3 o'clock that we're actually finishing. So you can kind of plan on this if you're going to be here for each of the days. This is my contact information if you're interested in contacting me for any reason. If you're coming to class and you're here, I will teach you and help you to learn. If you're not coming to class, that's okay too. You don't have to check in with me and let me know you're not coming to class. As you see, I don't take attendance or anything like that. So if you're here, great, I will teach you. And if you're not, that's fine too. This contact information is more so for after the class, after the course, that if you would like to contact me for any reason, just know that there's support for you beyond this course that you can continue to learn. You'll find all this information on our website. So if you have our website, all this information is there. You're welcome to contact me for personal guidance at any time or any help that you need in your journey to enlightenment. In terms of our structure for each day, each morning we start at 9 a.m. with some chanting and meditation. So when you come in, you're welcome to get a chanting sheet, come in and do some meditation. You'll see on Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to teach you meditation. But prior to that, we're going to do it a few times to give you guys a chance to kind of experience it before I actually teach it to you. So each day we're going to be doing chanting and meditation. And then by 9:30, I'm going to start sharing the teachings of the Buddha with you. Some people call this a Dhamma talk. The word Dhamma means teachings, but to say teachings talk, it sounds a little bit odd. But the way that I actually think about this is it's not a sermon, it's not a lecture or anything like that. It's a discussion. It's me sharing information with you about the teachings of the Buddha, inviting you to understand what it is that you're learning, and then you asking questions about those teachings. Because as I'm sharing these natural laws with you that the Buddha taught, you're going to hear things that are very different than the way that you currently think about the world. The whole thing that keeps the mind in the unenlightened state is its lack of wisdom. So when you come here, you're going to hear me say things that are very different than the way that you currently think about the world. And that's a really helpful place to be. Because if you come to a place like this and you hear all the same things that you currently understand about the world, you're in the wrong place. You're not learning and growing and developing. So the things that I share with you are going to be different, perhaps, than what you currently think about the world. And that's a very good opportunity for you to learn and grow, develop, and evolve. Because even though we're all equal, if you think about the Buddha's wisdom as being here, In the mind of an unenlightened being, their wisdom is here. Well, you're going to need to learn what is that wisdom that this individual understood in order to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. So it's going to be different than what you currently understand. So where you hear things that are different than what you currently understand, that's an opportunity for you to ask questions and get help to be able to understand things in a better way. Everything that the Buddha taught is independently verifiable. So if there's ever anything that I share with you that you're like, that doesn't quite sound right based on what I've heard in other places, or that doesn't sound right based on the way that I do things in my day-to-day life, just ask questions, and then I'll help you to get some clarity on why it is that the Buddha teaches these particular things and how it actually relates to you experiencing this better way of life that the Buddha taught. So that's what these periods of time are, where I'm sharing the teachings, is an opportunity for me to share with you what the Buddha taught, and then you to be able to get guidance and help on that. Everything that I teach is based in the original words of the Buddha, and everything that I teach has been independently verified. I don't teach you anything that somebody else told me might be true, or something that I just saw somewhere on a website or a book or something like that. Every single thing that I teach you is based in the original words of the Buddha. I've independently verified it, and I know it's the truth. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing it with you. So if there's anything that you hear that is opposite of what you currently think, because there will be those situations, that's your opportunity to ask questions and gain a better understanding. And sometimes when you're in a class like this and a teacher sharing with you, you're not going to understand what it is that they're sharing necessarily 100% right away when they're sharing it. Sometimes you need to take in what a teacher's sharing with you, step away from the conversation, think about it, reflect on it for a few days, or maybe even a few weeks, and then you'll come to a better understanding. I've had some students that come to classes like this and they ask questions and they're trying to understand. And it's not until 6 months or even a year later that they'll send me an email or a message and they'll be like, oh my gosh, David, I understand what it is that you were saying now. It finally makes sense to me. I finally figured it out. So understand that this is an opportunity for you to learn, grow, and develop. It's not going to be a situation where you hear everything that you currently understand about the world, because the unenlightened mind, if you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings, the mind is unenlightened. It has a lack of wisdom. And what you're doing is you're working to try to independently verify this wisdom that this individual had, which is the Buddha. And that's an opportunity for you to ask questions. So that's what we're going to be doing during these periods of time. We're going to take a mid-morning break, because I usually start a topic around 9:30. We usually take a mid-morning break each morning, and then I start sharing some more about a certain topic. And ultimately, we build up to lunch, where we generally take lunch around 12 o'clock. Again, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. And we usually have about an hour and a half for each lunch break, where you can go out and get food. You can stay here. Sometimes people like to take naps here, or yoga, stretching, doing different things. You can do whatever you like. This is a community space. It doesn't belong to me. So if you'd like to go out and get some food and come back and relax, you're welcome to do those kinds of things. So feel free to use this space as you like. I generally get here around 8:15 to 8:30. So you guys are welcome to show up at any time. And if you like to show up earlier, I'll just give you the combination to the lock, and you can even come in earlier if you like. You can get here before I do if you like. So you can use this space. It's a community space. It doesn't belong to me. It's the community's. So you're welcome to come here and use this space however you like. Then after our lunch, I'll let you know each day what time we're coming back, and then I'm going to share some more teachings with you. Typically, what I'm sharing in the afternoons is about meditation, something connected to meditation. Like this afternoon is about chanting. Tomorrow is going to be breathing mindfulness meditation. Wednesday is going to be walking meditation. So each afternoon, it's really preserved to talk about meditation, help you learn it, and then we also practice it too. So as part of our course, you're going to be meditating twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. And then we generally finish around 3 o'clock. We're going to do this for 4 days, and this is going to build up to the 5th day, where I invite you guys out to a field trip where we come together and then we go out to Wat Umong and Wat Doi Sutep. These are two different types of Buddhist teachings here in Thailand. They're two different branches, the forest tradition and the city tradition. and we visit these temples, and I teach you the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism related to the teachings of the Buddha, so that way when you visit a temple, you'll be able to understand what it is that you're looking at. It's kind of like a classroom without walls, where we walk through the temple and I just guide you and kind of show you things and help you to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha through the artwork, architecture, and symbolism. That way, when you visit temples in the future, it'll be more meaningful for you, that you'll understand what it is that you're actually looking at. So you're welcome to come to this, and anybody else is welcome to come to this too. You'll see some people will come to this that isn't even part of this course, because people find out about this tour and they will just come for the tour. So as you bump into people this week, they're more than welcome and invited to come into our course, or even just come to the tour if they'd like. So everybody and anybody's welcome. So this is kind of generally our plan for the entire course. The course is based on this first book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually get this for free if you don't already have it. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost. Or if your country has access to Amazon, you can get it through Amazon. I'm going to be covering chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 19. And you'll see each talk that I give, it'll show you what chapter it is that I'm giving you a talk about. So this is a first volume of a 13-volume book series. And what students tell me is they read this book multiple times, and each time they read it, they're gleaning new information from it. I've had some students tell me they've read it 8 to 12 different times, and each time they read it, they're experiencing the learning of something new that they didn't see the first time, or they didn't understand the first time. It's kind of like watching a movie multiple times. You see details that you didn't see originally. So if you get one of these books, you can actually be regularly reading it, just maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. Just a little bit of reading will help you to be able to take in the teachings, because you're not reading for completion. You're reading to be able to independently verify the teachings as you go through it. Sometimes people take as much as 6 months or a year to gradually go through this book. It's not like a novel or a storybook where you're just kind of plowing through it to find out what the ending of the story is. I'll explain to you the ending of the story of this book right now. The ending of the story is you get to enlightenment. That's the ending of the story. But in order to do that, you're going to need to gradually take your time to be able to understand. So you don't have to just hurry up and get to the end. You can just take your time and gradually independently verify each aspect of the teachings. Okay, so that's an important book to help you guys. In terms of the topics I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm going to start off this morning with the life story of Gotama Buddha, because that's the best place to really start, is to understand this individual's life. Then I'm going to teach you about what is enlightenment. Because if I said to you, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai? And your first thing you'd probably ask, if you didn't know, would be, what is Chiang Rai? Right? And I'd be like, oh, it's this city in the north. You need to go over the mountains outside of Chiang Mai. It takes you about 3 hours to get there. And then you'll see this, and you'll see that, and you'll see this, and you'll see that. And you're like, okay, let's go. Right? And now as you navigate your way to Chiang Rai, you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And once you arrive, you'll know that you're in Chiang Rai. So it's the same thing with enlightenment, that if you understand what it is, you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you actually get to enlightenment, you'll know that your mind's actually enlightened. So I'm going to spend some time to help you understand what enlightenment is. Then tomorrow, I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha, where in 4 simple statements, you understand the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward in a way that you can independently verify. You'll be able to have a breakthrough to being able to see why your mind experiences things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So this Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching that all the students of the Buddha would typically start out with. So I'm going to teach you guys that in a way that you can independently verify. As part of that, I'm going to be teaching you the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is the path to enlightenment. You would need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down, in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And you're going to need to learn it more than one time. You're going to need to actually commit it to your memory. You're not going to be able to fully commit it to your memory just tomorrow when I teach it to you, but over multiple studying opportunities, you'll be able to commit it to your memory. I wouldn't be surprised if there's students that show up tomorrow that have been studying with me in the past, and they're just showing up tomorrow in order to kind of get a refresher on this particular teaching, because this is a teaching that you're going to need to learn multiple times to really dial it into your life closer and closer. It's a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So we're going to spend our time walking you through that. Then on Wednesday morning, I'm going to teach you transforming the three poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance, where the Four Noble Truths gives you like a little window into the unenlightened mind to understand what's going on. This topic of the three poisons really broadens your understanding, and it deepens your understanding to be able to see more of what's going on in the mind. And we're going to talk about what these problems are that the Buddha discovered, but we're also going to talk about the solutions of how to fix it as well, so that you can actually implement the solutions. Then I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. If you've ever heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, the Buddha actually didn't teach that. He doesn't teach that way. That sounds like black and white. It sounds like rules and commandments. I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand what he taught on this important topic. And then I'm going to show you how to relate it to your day-to-day activities so that you can actually use this teaching to be able to apply it to day-to-day decisions that you make. So I'm going to use the original words of the Buddha throughout this entire course, including with the 5 precepts, helping you to be able to see what did the Buddha actually teach, so that then you'll know what he actually taught. I'm going to teach you what is Gama and how does it affect me. This is a natural law that is affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Some people call it karma. You might have heard that word. That's a Sanskrit language that uses that word. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so people who study his teachings will tend to use this word Gama. This is a natural law that is affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And we could say everything and anything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. So we're going to be talking about this all the way through the entire course. But then when we get to this point, I'm going to teach you 4 types of Gama. That way you can understand what these 4 types of Gama are. And then ultimately, I'm going to teach you how to extinguish all your unwholesome Gama. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer have any unwholesome Gama. So this isn't anything mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. You're going to see what this natural law is all about, and I'm going to really demystify it for you so that you can see it in your day-to-day life, and you can be able to independently verify that it's actually true and that you can actually see the results of this. Then I'm going to teach you what is merit and how to receive continued support on the path to enlightenment. I'm going to be teaching you meditation. Breathing mindfulness meditation is what we're going to be focused on. And I'm going to teach you this in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. And then I'm going to teach you Buddhist chanting as well. And then by the time we get to the end of our course, I'm going to teach you how to integrate what you've learned in the course into your day-to-day life, so that way you're actually able to continue to grow and develop beyond this course. Because sometimes people have a learning event like this and they come for 5 days, and then when they're done, they have a hard time integrating stuff into their day-to-day life. So if that's the case, if I didn't teach you this, it's kind of like, well, we spent 5 days together, have a good time. Right? It's just kind of over. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you for 5 days of things that are going to build you up, but then I'm going to teach you how to get the benefit of that beyond this course. So I'm going to teach you how to integrate what you've learned into your day-to-day life. So this is what I'm going to be sharing with you guys throughout the course. Any questions on any of this? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online. For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. And I think you guys all know about the microphones here, that if you guys could use the microphones, that would be great. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the life story of the Buddha. This is actually chapter 19 in this book, and this chapter is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death, because this is what helped to motivate Siddhartha Gotama to go on this journey to actually get to enlightenment. And sometimes people ask, David, why did you make this chapter 19 of the book? Shouldn't that be chapter 1, that you're sharing the life story of the Buddha? Well, when the Buddha was asked during his lifetime about how could we respect you, what is the best way to respect you, he said, the best way to respect me is to learn and practice the teachings. That's the best way to respect me. So the Buddha wasn't putting his life story front and center of his teachings. Instead, he was focusing people on learning and growing and developing to get to enlightenment. So that's what I did in this book as well, is that I focused on the teachings to help you guys understand what the teachings are. And then by the time we get to chapter 19, I share with you a bit of the life story of the Buddha. And we're going to talk about sickness, aging, and death, because in the unenlightened state, that is very challenging for you. But by the time you get to enlightenment, the human existence is not difficult any longer. In the unenlightened state, yeah, it feels very difficult sometimes. There can be misery and grief and sorrow and despair in the mind, but that's only what an unenlightened being is experiencing. So that's why I titled this chapter, The Difficult Human Existence, because in the unenlightened state, when you're experiencing sickness, aging, and death, it can feel very difficult for you. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. Everything's peaceful and joyful. You're living the ideal life. Your mind's cheerful and bright and uplifted. So I'm going to share with you guys the teachings of the Buddha in terms of his life story, based in what is in the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is 45 volumes of books that are this thick, and this is the original, largest, most complete collection we have of the teachings of the Buddha. And his life story is in there. And I've organized this talk in these sections, where I'm going to talk about his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, and his teaching career. And then ultimately, we're going to circle back and talk about sickness, aging, and death, and what the Buddha discovered about this, and why it's so difficult for people to experience this. So this individual that we refer to as the Buddha, or Gotama Buddha, he was born in a region of the world that we refer to as Nepal. And then he taught in northeast India. But that line between India and Nepal didn't exist 2,500 years ago. He was born in 563 BCE. And he was born into a royal family. His mother was a queen, his dad was a king. And during this time frame, if you were pregnant as a woman and you were going to deliver a baby, they would take you back to your homeland in order to deliver the baby. So that way your brothers and sisters, your parents, your family could be around you to be able to take care of the baby. So as she was getting close to the time where it was time to deliver the baby, the king organized a caravan to be able to take her back to her homeland. And as she was traveling back to her homeland, she goes into labor pains. So they need to stop the caravan, and she gets out and she goes over to a tree, and she's holding on to a tree trying to deliver the baby, because the baby was having difficulties coming out of the normal birthing canal. But eventually the baby does come out. It comes out through the side of the stomach and breaks through the side of the stomach. And because of this, his mom actually ends up dying 7 days later, because they didn't have the medical technology that we have today for a C-section, where today we just do a C-section, she'd be fine, no big deal. But 2,500 years ago, they didn't have that technology. So she ends up dying. And because this wasn't necessarily uncommon, they actually had protocols in place for this, that if you were a woman that you died during childbirth and your children lived, that your siblings would adopt your children as their own. So Siddhartha Gotama's mother had an older sister who adopted him as her own child. So his aunt became his stepmother. So as the story is written and the story is talked about, people say that when Siddhartha Gotama was born, he immediately walked 7 steps, lotus flowers blossomed under his feet, and he spoke and he said, "This will be my last birth." I don't think this story is true. This part of the story, I don't think it's actually true, because if this part of the story is true, the next part wouldn't actually be needed. But sometimes what happens when an individual lives like a Buddha and they do something so significant like this, as the stories are handed down from person to person, they actually kind of embellish the stories to make the person look even better than they were. But we don't need to embellish the story of a Buddha. A Buddha has already done some amazing things in the world. We don't have to embellish their story. But I think that's actually what occurred here, because if this actually occurred, the next part of the story wouldn't be needed. So the next part of the story is that Siddhartha Gotama, having been born into the world and now having been adopted by his stepmother, his aunt, his father was interested to know what his son was going to become. So he summons these advisors to come to him. They're kind of like fortune tellers. He summons 108 advisors to come and let him know what his son was going to become. Well, if your son is born and they're walking right away and lotus flowers are blossoming under their feet and they're speaking, you don't need to have any advisors to tell you what this child's going to become. You can already see they're quite special, right? But nonetheless, this was kind of customary at the time to have advisors to come and let you know what your son was going to become. So these fortune tellers, these advisors, 107 of them came to the king and said, your son is going to be a great monarch. He's going to be a great ruler. He's going to rule over your territory, and he's going to expand your territory far and wide. And his father was like, that's my boy. Okay, yeah, that's what he wanted to hear, right? But there was this one advisor who came in at the end. He apologized to the king. He said, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I heard what the other advisors said, and they're 100% accurate. Your son is going to be a great leader, but he's not going to be a monarch. He's not going to be a ruler. He's going to be a spiritual leader." And his father didn't like this part, so he didn't like this information. So he decided he was not interested in his son being a spiritual leader. He wanted him to be a monarch and a ruler, to expand his territory. So he decides he's going to sequester his son in the palace and keep him in the royal palace and never let him go outside the palace. He was going to try to kind of woo him into the ways of being a monarch and a ruler. So he lavished him with everything you can imagine that a rich royal father could give to their son. He gave him amazing fabrics to wear as clothing. He gave him amazing food, entertainment, beautiful women bathing him and taking care of him, all the royal riches you can imagine, because he thought that he could get him hooked to this lifestyle of being a king and a royal member of the royal family, and he would never be interested to leave and go be a spiritual leader. And he thought if he kept him in the palace, that he wouldn't get involved in worldly affairs, and then he wouldn't be interested in being a spiritual leader. So for 29 years, this is what was going on. Siddhartha Gotama was being lavished with all these gifts from his father. But after 29 years, he realized he was about to become the king, and he had never even been outside the palace. Because during this period of time, you would become the king at the age of 30, where your father would then retire, and then they would live right alongside of you in order to be able to teach you how to be a better and better king. So at the age of 29, he realizes he's about to become the king, and he's never even been outside the palace. How could he rule over these people and help them if he didn't even understand what it was like out inside in the kingdom? So without his father's knowledge and against his wishes, he ends up going outside the palace, and he takes with him his royal attendant, which is kind of like his chief confidant, the person who's like his chief of staff, his homie, right? His homeboy, right? That's who he took with him, right? So he went outside the palace, and as he goes outside the palace, he has what's called the 4 observations. These 4 observations, he sees a sickly person, an aging person, a dead corpse, and a roaming ascetic. And when he sees these things, they have a real impact on him. When he sees the sickly person, this person is disgruntled and in despair, and his family is also experiencing that too. And he needs to turn to his royal attendant, and he says, "What's going on over there? Why are those people so frustrated and grumpy and irritable?" And he's like, "Oh, they're going to have difficulties because that person is sick, and now they can't work, and they can't acquire the basic necessities to sustain life." Well, this had a real impact on Siddhartha Gotama because he lived this life of luxury. He lived this lavish lifestyle. And if you grew up this way for 29 years and that's all you knew, you'd probably think everybody lived in that same way. So when he saw this person struggling and the family struggling, it had a real impact on him. And then he saw an aging person, a person who was a little bit older. They were kind of decrepit. They were having difficulties moving around. And again, there was this disgruntledness and agitation and frustration. And he needs to ask his royal attendant, "What's going on over there?" And he's like, "The same thing. This person's going to have a hard time acquiring the basic necessities to sustain their life." So again, this had a big impact on Siddhartha Gotama because he had never seen that before, because he had this life of luxury. Then he saw a dead corpse, and the family was grieving around the corpse. And again, he needed to ask his royal attendant what was happening there. And it was the same thing, that this person was one of the main people that was helping them to provide resources for the family, and they weren't going to be able to survive as easily now that this person had died. And again, enormous impact on Siddhartha Gotama. He starts to see the kingdom as being full of suffering and despair. So he sees the 4th observation, which is an individual who's given up worldly life in order to go on this journey to be able to figure out how to get to enlightenment. That's not what you have to do in order to get to enlightenment, but that's what some people did, many of them during the lifetime of the Buddha. They would walk away from their life and then enter into this life of homelessness to be able to try to figure out how to get to enlightenment. So he sees this person off meditating, and he asks his royal attendant, "Well, what's that person doing over there?" And he's like, "Oh, that person? they're trying to figure out all of this stuff. They're trying to figure out why we experience sickness, aging, and death, and all this misery and despair during this period of time. And Siddhartha Gautama decides that's what he's interested in doing. He would like to figure out how to help people out of this despair that they're experiencing, that he felt like the kingdom was full of misery and he wasn't interested in ruling over that misery and despair. He was interested in helping the people get beyond that and evolve past it. So he decides he's going to leave the royal palace and go on this journey to be able to get to enlightenment. So he goes back to the royal palace, and when he does, his wife and his young infant son, he was married and had a young infant son at the time, they were sleeping. And he just kind of looks in on them, and he doesn't wake them up and say goodbye or anything like that, because he felt like if he woke them up and said goodbye, that he wouldn't be able to leave, that he wouldn't go on this journey to be able to help figure out how to help people. So he didn't understand his mind as much as he would later by the time he actually got to enlightenment, but he understood it enough that he felt like if he woke them up, it would be too difficult for him to say goodbye. So he just kind of leaves in the middle of the night, and he takes with him his favorite horse, and he takes with him his royal attendant, and he then leaves out of the royal palace. And when he gets outside the royal palace, eventually he gets to the point where he turns his horse go. He lets his royal attendant know that he's been helpful, and he lets him know that he doesn't need them anymore. And he ends up cutting off his hair. At this time, he had this long, beautiful, flowing hair. Any member of the royal family, they would grow their hair very long and beautiful, even the men. And this is the way that they knew that you were a member of the royal family. That today, if they're interested in knowing who's a member of the royal family, we just put pictures of the king and the queen all over the place and on the money and on the internet and on the news, and everybody knows who the king and the queen is. But they didn't have that technology 2,500 years ago. So the way that they knew you were a member of the royal family is you would grow your hair very long and beautiful, because it was only the royal family that had the ability to sit around and have servants comb their hair, brush their hair, shampoo their hair, detangle their hair, because those of us that were working out in the fields doing labor jobs, that hair would get all knotted and tangled. We wouldn't be able to actually have the time to care for this hair. But the royal family had servants, they had the time and the resources to sit around and just have their hair be maintained and very beautiful. So why him cutting off his hair, it's like, I'm never going back. I'm never going back to that royal throne, because nobody would ever think that he was the king, because he'd been growing his hair for 29 years and now he cut it off. So that's like, I'm never going back, right? So from this point, he ends up taking up training with two different teachers. He takes up training with the first teacher because this person was claiming that it was their teachings that would lead to enlightenment. So he starts learning with this person. This person teaches him to hang himself upside down from trees, to lay on beds of nails, to pierce his body with metal implements, to starve himself. Don't worry, we're not going to be doing any of that stuff. That's not what we're actually doing to get to enlightenment, right? But this is what Siddhartha Gautama did when he first got started. And for about a year, he was doing these kinds of things. The thought was that if you could cause physical pain to the body and your mind could overcome that pain, that you would get to enlightenment. So he does this for an entire year. And after a year, his teacher came to him and said, "You've mastered my teachings. I don't have anything else to teach you." And Siddhartha Gautama realized that his mind wasn't any more peaceful than it was when he was in the palace. So he decides to leave and go study with another teacher. And he studies with his second teacher. And it's pretty much the same thing. Laying on beds of nails, hanging himself upside down from trees, piercing his body with metal implements, starving himself. And once again, after 1 year, the teacher comes to him and says, "You've mastered my teachings. I don't have anything else to teach you." Right? And Siddhartha Gautama realized his mind wasn't any more peaceful than it was when he was in the royal palace. So he was frustrated with the whole thing, and he decides to go off on his own. He thought he had wasted 2 years of his life. So he goes off on his own, and he starts trying to train himself. But the only things he knew were the things that he had already learned from these other teachers. So he was kind of doing those kinds of things, still starving himself and all these kinds of stuff. He got to the point where he was only eating 1 grain of rice per day. That's how he was sustaining himself. 1 grain of rice per day. Right? So he took this very, very far to test it to see if it was actually working. Well, he was on the edge of the forest meditating, and he was basically skin and bones. He was on death's doorstep, And there was a woman and a young child that comes by, and they see him, and they see that he's about to die because they see the skin and bones, and they beg and plead with him to eat some rice. And he reluctantly accepts this rice. And in this moment, he has a realization where he has this shift in his thinking, where he realizes that when he was in the palace, he was living with everything that you could imagine. He had all these sensual pleasures of anything and everything that he could have as a member of the royal family. But when he left, he swung all the way to the other side, where he was doing all these disparaging things to the body, just eating 1 grain of rice per day. And in this moment, he realizes there's a middle way, that you can do things in moderation. And it's this middle way that's going to lead to enlightenment. So he starts to practice what is referred to as the middle way, doing things in moderation. So over the next 4 years, he ends up training his mind to get to enlightenment. So a total of 6 years that he ends up making his way to enlightenment. And he knows his mind's enlightened because it's peaceful, it's calm, it's serene, it's content with joy. He doesn't experience any discontent feelings any longer. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all that's eliminated from the mind. And he knows that he's gotten to enlightenment. But he knew that his teachings were very different than anybody was teaching at the time. So he wasn't quite sure whether he was interested in sharing those teachings or not. So he goes to this tree in northeast India, a place called Bodh Gaya, and he hangs out at this tree for 7 weeks, contemplating whether or not he should actually share his teachings. Well, we know what happened is by the end of that 7 weeks, he did decide to share his actual teachings. So the way that this happened is he ended up going back to the place where he was originally studying with those first 2 teachers. And when he gets back to that place, he encounters 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers. And when he encounters these people, they start laughing at him, joking him and mocking him. They thought he had given up on the path to enlightenment because they saw this really bright, vibrant, healthy individual with meat on his bones walking towards them, and they started laughing at him because they thought that he had given up on the path to enlightenment. Because to them, in order to get to enlightenment, you needed to be starving yourself. You needed to be hanging yourself upside down from trees and doing all these other things. So when they saw this bright, vibrant, healthy-looking individual coming towards them, they thought he had given up on the path. So they start laughing at him and joking him and mocking him. But by the time you get to enlightenment, those kinds of things don't affect you. Right now, if you experience that, it might affect your mind. But by the time you get to enlightenment, it doesn't affect you. So the Buddha's mind was unaffected. So he just walks over to where they're at. He sits down on the floor and he takes his hand and he touches the earth. And this is the one and only miracle that he ever performed. When he touched the earth, the animals came to where he was at. So there were deer and squirrels and rabbits and birds and lizards, and all these animals came to where he was at. And these 5 people were like, okay, you have my attention. What do you have to share? Right? And they sat down and they listened to what he had to share. And he shared the 4 Noble Truths, his very first teaching, which is what I'm going to teach you tomorrow. And in 4 simple statements, he explained to them the problem in their mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to fix it. And because a Buddha's teachings are independently verifiable, they were able to independently verify his teachings, and they knew that he had gotten to enlightenment. So those were his first 5 students. And then from that point forward, people just kept learning, growing more and more and more and more and more. But he didn't perform any more miracles. A Buddha doesn't go around and perform a bunch of miracles because he doesn't need people to know that he's a Buddha in order to be effective. A Buddha's teachings are independently verifiable, and people, it's better if they actually don't know that this person's an actual Buddha. If everybody knew who a Buddha was, they would kind of be on their best behavior when they're around a Buddha. And one of the powers and one of the strengths that a Buddha has is they can actually observe the quality of their student's mind and then be able to offer them teachings to be able to help them to be able to learn how to get to enlightenment. And they'd only do this with their students because their students are interested in learning and growing and developing. Whereas if everybody knew that he was a Buddha, then that would be useless because now people would kind of be on their best behavior when they were around him. So not everybody knew that he was a Buddha. He just shared his teachings, and now countless people kept coming around to learn and grow and understand the path. And he ultimately dies at the age of 80 in 483 BCE. And he had taught for 45 years, from the age of 35 to the age of 80. And countless people get to enlightenment during this period of time. And then when he died, they started to preserve his teachings. They started to write his teachings down. He preserved his teachings during his lifetime through the chanting and helping people to understand them. But after he died, they started to document his teachings because everything that he shared was oral. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll never forget what it takes to actually get to enlightenment. Your mind is basically like upgraded your operating system, like a computer. You've upgraded your operating system, and now you'll never forget what it took for you to actually get to enlightenment. So these individuals who got together, their mind was deeply practicing the teachings, and their mind was focused and concentrated, had clarity of mind and deep memory. They were able to document his teachings. So by the time he died, there were countless people that were enlightened, but 500 of them got together and they documented his teachings. And that's what we refer to as the Pali Canon. That's his original teachings. So this is the life story of the Buddha. He ends up actually coming back. This is a question. I'm going to get ready to open up to questions, but this is one of the questions that people usually ask me, is he ends up coming back to the area where he was originally in the kingdom with his father, and his wife ends up ordaining with him. His son ends up ordaining with him. His stepmother ends up ordaining with him. These people are all getting to enlightenment during his lifetime, where sometimes people think the Buddha left his family and never went back. This isn't actually true. He just stepped away for 6 years to train his mind and get to enlightenment, and then he was able to help countless people. Even today, there's people who are still benefiting from his teachings and actually experiencing enlightenment because of them. So if the Buddha would have never stepped away like that to be able to train his mind, then we wouldn't have these teachings to be able to understand how to get to enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions on the life story of the Buddha? Anything you'd like to ask? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online here. Okay, so now I'm going to circle back and talk about the sickness, aging, and death, because those were 3 of the 4 motivators that motivated him to be able to get to enlightenment. What he discovered is that the reason why people have so much trouble during sickness is because they're craving permanent health. And this body is not permanent, that we live in an impermanent world. And as long as you crave permanent health, but now the body is sick, you'll be frustrated and angry and irritated. The mind is craving this permanence, but yet you live in an impermanent world. The same thing with aging. If you crave permanent youthfulness, when you start seeing wrinkles or gray hair, or you start not being able to move around so easily anymore, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or if you crave permanent life, or you crave for the people around you to be in your life permanently, then when they die or you're getting close to death, it'll be very challenging for you. So that's the underlying cause of what's producing those discontent feelings, that disgruntledness, that it's because of craving, desire, attachment that the mind is experiencing these difficulties and struggles. And then because there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death. As long as an individual is born, they're going to experience sickness, aging, and death. You can't avoid that. It's going to happen because this body is not permanent. So the Buddha basically helped people to figure this out. And then he discovered the training that is going to help you to be able to train your mind to not crave permanence. And that's what we're going to start talking about as we go forward in this course. So this is the life story of the Buddha and what motivated him to get to enlightenment. And the way that I typically like to end this is to share this with you, because we started out saying how this difficult human existence, sickness, aging, and death. Well, no one ever said that life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough, right? Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings is not easy, but learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough. That's what this path is about. It's about healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. And that's challenging. Sure, there's plenty of fun and enjoyment along the path to enlightenment, but there's going to be times where it's very challenging, right? It's one thing to sit here in class and talk about being loving and kind and warm and gentle, but it's a whole nother thing when you're talking to your parents, when you're talking to your siblings, when you're spending time with your life partner. And now it's very challenging for you to practice being loving and kind in those situations. So it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And when you're standing at the bottom of the mountain and you're looking up to the top of the mountain, it's like, whoa, that's a really tall mountain. But I don't suggest you focus on that. What I suggest you focus on is one step at a time. If you just focus on one step at a time, next thing you know, you're halfway up the mountain. And you're like, whoa, this isn't very difficult at all, right? And then the beauty about this particular mountain is normally when you climb a physical mountain, you get up to the top of the mountain and it's a beautiful view and you get all this fresh air and you're like, wow, I could just stay up here all day. This place is wonderful. But then eventually you have to come back down the mountain. But getting to enlightenment is a permanent mental state. Getting to this mental state, you will never again experience any of these discontent feelings. Your mind will permanently be in this mental state. So you climb this mountain and you get to stay up there, enjoy the fresh air and the view the rest of your life. So nobody ever said life was going to be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough. Learning and practicing these teachings, it's not easy, but it's going to ensure that life is not tough. Gradually, slowly but surely, you can make your way up this path and you can experience the same mental state that the Buddha experienced. He was a human being, just like you and I. And you can experience this mental state just like he did. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break, give you guys a chance to talk with each other, meet each other, use the bathroom, get a snack, whatever it is that you'd like to do. And then when we come back, I'm going to teach this next topic of what is enlightenment, so you guys can understand what this mental state is. It's now 15 minutes after 10, so why don't we take up to 10:30, give you guys a 15-minute break to spend some time and hang out with each other. Okay, so thank you guys, and I'll enjoy spending time with you guys over the next week and helping you guys learn the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, you're welcome.